Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Another Dolphins podcast. Every time I write a rundown, I am shocked. We have reached week 15, and for another week, the Miami Dolphins are facing a must-win game. Josh, what is this? 5-6 weeks in a row where we're just do or die with this team?
Yeah, and I mean that's a testament to I guess the hole the Dolphins have dug themselves in, and maybe how important Tua Tagovailoa is. But yeah, man, every week it seems like it's a must-win situation, and playing a Houston Texans team that heading into the year is one of those AFC favorites. This is as big of a matchup as any, and as we will discuss, D'Amico Ryans and Mike McDaniel do have a history together.
That's a great point. There's a lot to dig into about this game. Some injuries along the offensive line. Odell Beckham Jr. See you later, but we will get to that stuff. Josh, I want to start with some good news. This is a Miami Dolphins team for all their weaknesses, for how big that hole is. They enter this week winning 4 of the last 5 games, most recently a 32-26 win over the New York Jets. And Josh, what's so interesting about Miami winning 4 of the last 5 games, it's because the one loss Thanksgiving against the Green Bay Packers, they could not get to Jordan Love. They could not sack Jordan Love. And I think that is a big reason that goes to, hey, we can't win a football game at night on primetime in the road against a good team. Maybe look at why you couldn't get to the quarterback. That hasn't been an issue, especially last week with Zach Sieler winning AFC Defensive Player of the Week. 4 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits. Josh, it was a little queasy. I think Aaron Rodgers and the Jets started last week's game with 5 straight scoring drives, just walking up and down the field. But when it mattered the most, 2 sacks in the fourth quarter. Zach Sieler, man, he is exactly what you need. Like, if you only have 2 bullets in your chamber, he's going to be hitting both of those bullets.
Yeah, tip of the hat to what his nickname is, Zach Sieler. But at the same time, I mean, let's be honest, man. We don't want the defensive, that interior defensive line to be leading your team in pressures and sacks and things like that. But at the same time, one of those I do believe Chop Robinson was coming around the edge and kind of forced Rodgers to step up into that pressure. So that's again a testament probably to losing Jalen Phillips and things like that. But we needed someone to step up. Zach Sieler has done it. I mentioned Chop Robinson. I know there's a lot of stats going around, but I thought it was interesting. It looks like over the last 2 weeks, he's kind of taken a step back a little bit. There's only been 4 pressures total, I think, over the last 2 weeks. Prior to that, he's just been on fire. So he needs to step up in this one against, again, the Houston Texans team, man, who's just awesome.
Someone that might help might return to this lineup this week, Josh. On Thursday, it really caught my eye when Mike McDaniel said that Bradley Chubb, his workload would be doubling. I paused. I think it was actually Wednesday he said that. 100% increase in workload for Bradley Chubb. Now he's coming out this week and saying, now he's coming out today being Friday, my apologies, and saying that, well, Chubb's getting close, but it kind of feels like I'll be feeling better about his opportunities next week. Where do you stand on the situation? Do you see Chubb coming back this week? And more importantly, do you think he should play this week?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could sit here. I mean, either of us. I wish we were there
Dr.
in
Houtz.
practice, right? Yeah, Houtz MD. I wish we had the cameras there. I think there was a highlight going around of Bradley Chubb, moving around. So, based on that, based on how meaningful this game is, I mean, I'd love to be able to sit here and say, I want to see Bradley Chubb out there, but we're not talking to him on his day-to-day basis. And let's be honest, man, it sounds like, I don't have a list of all the injuries in front of me, but it sounded like it might have been more significant of an injury than we had thought. So
ACL, patella, and meniscus.
yeah, A, B, C, D. I just, that just sounds like the entire thing, and that just sounds bad to me. So
Yeah.
the fact that he's even, potentially coming back at this stage of the season, that's a testament to his work ethic. But I don't know how many times I said testament now, but yeah, I'd love to see Bradley Chubb out there for this one because again, it means so much.
Tied for the league lead with 6 forced fumbles last year. He also had 11 sacks. I think he would give this defense an absolute boost, but we are stuck in wait and see mode. It's so tough, man. I did Finn's TV earlier this week, and it was Tuesday night, so it was right before the Dolphins returned to podcast. And Sammy, Steve, Matt, Sherry, we were all kind of just talking about, like, is Bradley Chubb going to be available? And it's so tough with McDaniel because we joke about this all the time. He could say, yeah, things are progressing nicely, and then come to work the next day and say, yeah, his arm fell off. He's done for the year. Or he could say, yeah, things are progressing nicely, and the next day come in and be like, yeah, he's starting this week and he's going to play 80% of snaps. It is so tough to get any sort of read on this guy, which I understand it's really tough when you consider that Bradley Chubb, I think it was New Year's Eve last year, less than 12 months, recovering from this major injury, but it's so hard to get a pulse on what this man is trying to say in any press conference.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he wants it partly that way, but at the same time, I think it's just the way his brain moves, right? Like he's
It's
just
true too.
probably like
Yeah.
me, you're just all over the place. You think one thing, I think another. I do have the stat now in front of me. Since week 8, he has Chop Roberts is tied for fourth most in the NFL with 31 pressures. It says, however, the Dolphins have produced a 28.6 pressure rate, which is sixth lowest as a team in that time frame. It also says over the last 2 weeks, he's only had 4 pressures, while Zach Sieler leads the way with 6. So we need someone to step up, right? And CJ Stroud, I mean, that's another dynamic that he adds to this whole thing is his ability to, use that escapability and things like that. So tough battle for those guys up front. Would love to see Bradley Chubb, hear him be activated. Maybe that's that domino that falls, as we'll talk about Odell Beckham Jr. in that roster spot. But Bradley Chubb, please come back. Save us, man.
Anthony Weaver was asked, were there any concerns about the performance Aaron Rodgers and that Jets offense had last week? Garrett Wilson, big day. Devontae Adams, big day. It really felt like the Jets could do whatever they wanted. So the idea was, Anthony Weaver, is there a weakness on your defense? Is something being exploited scheme-wise? Is there an issue here? He didn't really see that as an issue. He kind of chopped it up and kind of tapped Aaron Rodgers on the back saying, 41-year-old NFL football genius really understood how to attack our defense, how to read our defense, and how to exploit our defense. Josh, after having a few days to stew on it, do you feel that is kind of the situation? Because think about it. Green Bay scored 30 points. Obviously, there were some turnovers, some issues there. But the New England Patriots, 15 points. The Raiders, 15 points. The Rams, who scored 44 against the Bills last week, 15 points. So was this just a blip on the radar, or where do you feel about the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit here and say it's a blip on the radar, but I feel like we're almost setting ourselves up for an encore presentation. So I do absolutely love Anthony
Wise.
Weaver's. I love Anthony Weaver's, responses these last few weeks. I think, he said if the shoe fits, kind of jokingly said, with the way the defense was playing, and then, with this one, he sat here, and, said if another team wants to go out there and sign a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, by all means, go ahead and do it. So, yeah, I hope it's just a blip, but again, I see when the pressure's not getting home so fast, and you got an Aaron Rodgers who's been around forever, he can pick you apart. I hope that CJ Stroud, we see some of that young, guy that overthinks things, tries to make a play out of some things that aren't there. So,
Good point.
and he'll make those mistakes, but that's been another issue with the Dolphins, right? You're not getting those turnovers, and that's just not good for a defense again who's struggling over the last few weeks.
CJ Stroud has taken 42 sacks through 13 games. He has thrown 15 touchdowns in 13 games. He has 9 interceptions. Houston has averaged 24 points per game this season. But I think this is super interesting because Anthony Weaver, I was reading through his quotes, he mentioned too that this was a team that Baltimore faced twice last year, including in the playoffs. So, Josh, do you put any stock in the fact that you look at when the Ravens and the Texans played last year? It wasn't just like, yeah, we beat the Texans. 59-19 was how much Baltimore outscored the Houston Texans in those two games. Don't get me wrong. I think that was the final score of Baltimore's one win over Miami. So that we have our own issues, and I'm not trying to compare the rosters. But do you see Anthony Weaver and how he's kind of used this defense and how he's manipulated it to do different things, whether it's Jalen Ramsey blitzing? Do you see a little bit of confidence in knowing like, this wasn't just something where they figured out a few things how to beat the Texans. They had that entire game plan figured out, understood that offense and how it wanted to operate.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, I guess that's where I'm wondering how much of a difference in gap of the talent, right, with that Baltimore Ravens defense.
It's
I
a
mean, they
very
have the
important point.
safeties, they have that. They have the safeties. They had a Roquan Smith in the middle of that defense. So there's some different players there, but I do think it's a lot. When Anthony Weaver has experience going against them, he should be able to go out there and hopefully have some sort of game plan. And I don't know how much we'll talk about it, but Garrett Wilson absolutely owned. I wrote an article for the Finsider. He absolutely owned Jalen Ramsey last week. I think he gave up 4 receptions, 97 yards. It was like the most Jalen Ramsey has been on record of having since 2017. And Mike McDaniel say, no, that's kind of good, right? He's going to bounce back. Yeah, it was even, I think the little asterisk said, dating back as far as 2017. Like they might even have records. It could have been back further than that. But Mike McDaniel said, this is what you want your playmakers to be tested a little bit, and let's see how he rises to occasion this week against Nico Collins. So I'm hoping this defense has a chip on their shoulder, and we see maybe that back end step up more because it. We mentioned Zach Sieler, Chop Robinson, some of those guys, they're getting it done, but you need to make those turnovers. You need Javon Holland to step up and some of those other guys that you
Yes.
hopefully are getting a payday, right?
Nico Collins, he leads the NFL with 104 yards per game. And then you got Joe Mixon. He averages over 100 total yards per game, a really physical back. He can carry the ball. He can catch the ball, 11 total touchdowns on the year. Josh, who do you see if the Texans are really going to push the Dolphins? And I am excited to talk about this offense. We know what this team is capable of, scoring 30 plus points a game. Tua, with him in the lineup, they're averaging 20 something. But if you see that this Texans team really pushing the Dolphins, and this defense does have some weaknesses where I could do so, is the engine, the person who really pushes this offense into a gear that the Dolphins can't keep up with, would you look at someone like Joe Mixon, or do you think it would be Nico Collins?
Yeah, that's a good question because I also had written down Dalton Schultz, right? He's a solid tight end who, and the Dolphins have had absolutely,
He's a nice handle
terrible
on him.
times. Yeah, 42 receptions, 424 yards, one touchdown. I'd written down the Dolphins can't cover a 10 and worth a damn. So, he could also have a big day, but I think I kind of lean towards Nico Collins again. I mean, you mentioned, man, 104 yards per game. He's an absolute unit. I mean, the guy's what, 6'5". He can run all the routes. He can beat you vertically. And again, coming off Jalen Ramsey's last game, one of his worst performances. I think he'd even tell you that. I mean, I want to see if he can even keep up with a guy like Nico Collins. So I kind of see that being the matchup where this thing could be won or lost. But you mentioned Joe Mixon, man, and that offensive line that they have. I mean, one of the Dolphins' biggest issues. I'm talking about Chop Robinson and those pressures he's getting, but he can't set the edge, right? That's his big issue. Not being able to set those edges, letting a guy like Joe Mixon get to the outside, that it could absolutely spell trouble. So I'm spinning out of control here, man. You can go either which way with this, but I'll take the easy route and go Nico Collins. Which one of these guys stands out to you?
I'm interested to see, because Jalen Ramsey, since he's gotten to Miami, I think, obviously, I think the pay has a big part to do with it, but he's been such a polarizing figure. Josh, I know he gave up some big receptions, but how much of that last week was not only him facing a good receiver, but you also just miss some, right? Like, I think there are some scenarios where, like, you face a lockdown cornerback, you see like a Darrell Revis stats where he like locks up 7 straight receivers in a row. I don't think you can expect that in today's NFL. I don't think you can expect that when Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball 40 times and you have a pass rush that you need your interior lineman, or you need someone like Jordan Brooks to blitz in order to get to him. Did you, when you were watching the film, did Jalen Ramsey look lost? Did he look cooked? Would your tone really change? Maybe would be feeling a complete 180 if he finished that tip drill interception, brought that in going down the sideline?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's easy to get tangled up into these stats that tell you that he had his shittiest game, but I mean, most of it was just that one play. If you look at it, I think Garrett Wilson, it was kind of a
That
double
was a
move
good
where,
one.
yeah, I mean,
Wilson's a
Jalen Ramsey
stud
just
though too.
fell on his, he fell on his ass, and then it was a big play. Which if Aaron Rodgers put that ball, in the right spot, that's probably an easy touchdown. I mean, thank
Mhm.
God it did the whole Madden animation where it carried him out of bounds at the worst opportunity. So I don't think it was nearly as bad as that, but I do think throughout the year you're seeing Jalen Ramsey. I don't want to say look a little bit slow, but look, not the same as maybe the guy they thought when they paid him. But I didn't joke. I hypothesized in the article. Maybe we see him moving to safety. I know we've talked about before. I know other people have talked about that. Maybe that's a move down the road, but it wasn't nearly as bad. But when you want Jalen Ramsey to be damn near perfect almost and expect him to almost erase the other guy, I mean, Garrett Wilson's a stud, but Jalen Ramsey versus Garrett Wilson, I mean, we kind of felt like it was tilted in our way, right? And maybe that was shame on us.
Yeah, I completely understand it, and you're 100% right, especially with what he's getting paid. I do think, though, where the age he's at, I think you kind of got to be like, all right, he's going to give up a couple, but you hope you get the interception. You hope you get that pendulum swinging play where you can really take advantage of, and you can kind of erase 3 receptions for 70 yards with just one, interception, one turnover, something like that. Josh, what are your thoughts when people say, you think about the Texans, they're in the AFC South, they've struggled a bit, but they're 8-5 on the year, right? They're leading the division. There's still a lot up in the air, but what do you think when people say the idea of like, this is a franchise that's already lapped the Dolphins and they're sitting there at 6-7 compared to Miami, or compared to the Texans, like I said, being at 8-5?
My first thing would be how many of those people are Dolphin fans, right? We're so
They're
down right
all.
now, though. It's
They
yeah,
all.
okay. I'm just making sure because I don't think Texan fans would, say it. I mean, they've had some success, but I mean, I feel like neither of us have really done much of anything. So it is kind of funny how it teeters, and it's just the NFL way, right? We already crowned C.J. Stroud, we crowned some of these guys. We also thought that the Dolphins had easily won this trade, and now we're looking at it and we're like, okay, the Texans have found some success as well. So yeah, I don't think it should be viewed that way, and I do think that this is a true test, right? I mean, Mike McDaniel knows D'Amico Ryans. We continue to hear about that relationship they had, but I mean, this if you want to prove that you can even contend in the AFC, you should be able to beat the Texans, right? With your back against the ropes, because there's a lot more bosses after the Texans, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the final
I like
boss.
that.
There's some stops in between there that are even another step than the Houston Texans. But I did get a little scared when I saw they were coming off the bye. I don't know about you, but I saw that
Good
like
point.
at the end of the Dolphins game last week, and I was like, oh yeah, I did have Tank Dell and Joe Mixon out of my fantasy line. That's right. Now the Dolphins are playing them after a bye. I was like, oh shit, that just spells trouble. But long-winded way of saying put up or shut up, man.
And with that too, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts, Josh, because I think the one thing that I'm still like, I don't even want to say annoyed with, but I'm worried about with this Dolphins team. I mean, they've lost 7 games. There's a lot of weaknesses, but I also look at last week. You kick what 3 first half field goals inside the 10-yard line, something like that. One from the 4-yard line. You kick on a 4th and 1. I'm just so caught up on those plays and worried that that's going to be what dooms the Dolphins. I'm really hoping that's not something we see again, especially on the road in Houston, because I just keep thinking about that first half, man, where you think about it, the 4th and 1 and then the 4th and goal where they kick the 2 field goals. You just got to make one of those 2 plays and you already score more points than 2 field goals, unless Jason Sanders misses another extra point. Where do you feel about this team in terms of these do or die situations where I hate this because I don't want to sound like it's like the Dolphins won and it's a victory, and I felt great about that. But there were just those little things in the first half where you saw the lack of urgency, you saw some sad field goals, and you really saw the game kind of unwinding in a way that they might lose. Where if it's peak in his prime, CJ Stroud throwing the ball downfield, he might make that throw, that one play that changes everything, where your offense doesn't have enough time to manipulate the game anymore. And you got to take advantage and be aggressive beforehand instead of always trying to play catch up.
I mean, that's a concern, right? I mean, that to me is, what this is all about. I mean, it's funny how we like to sit here and, talk about just the individual statistics, maybe a two-time low, or just the Dolphins in general, this stretch of games that they played so well. But looking at the beginning of the year, everyone in their schedules had this as that easy part, right? Oh, the Dolphins are going to wipe right through this. Many thought they'd even beat the Packers, which, shame on us. But this was that, stop that brick in the road that, okay, now the Dolphins have to go out there and show that they can beat a Houston Texans team that's very good. So I'm worried that we're going to see the same old Dolphins. I mean, it's setting up to be the same old Dolphins, but maybe that's why we should expect them to go out there and play with their asses off, right, man? And they're battling just to get back to 500, which it's just so funny the way the NFL season unfolds. But a win against the Texans would go a long way.
And it's crazy to me, man. The Dolphins have scored 32 points or more in 3 of the last 4 games. And as this is so Dolphins, that Jets game look, the Jets just found such a way to out-Jets themselves. And I hate that I'm describing it this way, but I assume all fans understand that you can use that's so Dolphins as a proper sentence and understand it. Josh, the Dolphins were 1 of 9 on 3rd down last week. A failed 3rd-and-1 at the Jets 21 that led to a field goal. A failed 3rd-and-1 Devon Achane 1-yard loss up the middle that led to a 4th-and-2. Miami actually went for it on that one. That was a completion to Jalen Waddle, so we got to give a hat tip there. On that same drive, though, after converting a 4th-and-2, 0-yard reception to Waddle at New York's 6-yard line that leads to a field goal on 4th-and-4. In the second half, Josh, we'll get to this more in a second, but Tua passed to OBJ for 1 yard on 3rd down, 3rd-and-4 at New York's 49. And then the touchdown drive early in the 4th, there was an Achane 3-yard loss on 3rd down. Woof. Tyreek did score on that next play, man, but there were just so many situations where, like, 3rd and short. These weren't scenarios, and I didn't go through all 9 of the 3rd down situations, but there were so many scenarios where, like, there was no bread and butter just to get through that 1st down. And you do wonder, man, can this offense survive without a rushing game? Were you surprised to see that Jeff Wilson wasn't more involved after his whopping 1 reception and his whopping 1 carry to move the sticks?
Yeah, I did. I mean, and this is a guy who, again, I think we all kind of sat there and say, you know what, buy Jeff Wilson. We can get rid of you. We can bring, keep Chris Brooks, for example. But once Jeff Wilson was on the roster, we thought, okay, they're going to keep us
There's a
as that
role.
guy late in the season. Yeah. And we all sat there as, fans, just, the guys eating chips, like Tua says, saying, why not give Jeff Wilson the ball in that cold ass weather in those, those short yardage situations? Even Jalen Wright, I mean, I'd rather see him get some of those touches. I can't remember who it was. I think they said that there's a reason, or the Dolphins have, they trust in
Bill, I
Achane in
think.
those situations, but I don't know, man. I love Devon Achane, but I'd much rather see, even Alec Ingold, snap or Durham Smythe under center for as god awful as we used to think that was, right? I mean, try something different than what's working or what's not working, because as we continue to see, it's just not working.
Jeff Wilson is one player that's been sitting around for the Miami Dolphins, and another player who was sitting around, and now he's going to be sitting around elsewhere. Josh, the Miami Dolphins released, Odell Beckham Jr. and the Miami Dolphins parted ways on Friday. Was this any surprise to you?
I mean, kind of right at this point in the season. I mean, I guess I'm not shocked that Odell Beckham Jr. and Mike McDaniel decided that it was better for him to go off and maybe land with a team that's still fighting in the playoffs, or maybe could use his services. And for Miami, you get to see more Malik Washington. So in that situation, I'm not surprised. But this part of the season, I thought maybe we'd only see guys quit mid-season like we saw for the Niners last night. So it caught me
Nice.
off a little bit of surprise, because it was the first thing I think I saw when I opened Twitter. I was like, is this like a real account? Like, is someone screwing me? Like,
I cannot believe, man. What did he have? 9 receptions for 50 yards? That was Odell Beckham's
yeah.
tenure?
Yeah, 18 targets, 9 catches, 3 first downs, 0 touchdowns. I mean, I went back. I did a cut up, and I was gonna post it on Twitter, but I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw it on YouTube. But he did make. I think there was a couple third down catches, 2 or 3 that were critical, but it felt so much like Braxton Berrios, man. And maybe it's shame on us for thinking that we were gonna get Odell Beckham Jr., a different version at 32, but dude's cooked, and I'm happy they decided to make this decision now, so we can see what Malik Washington could do after, that monumental moment, like Mike McDaniel said, and even what he does in the run game. I mean, I think he just is more hungry than a guy that Odell Beckham at this age, who is not going to hit those incentives, right? By no chance.
Odell Beckham Jr., 9 receptions for 55 yards on the year. Malik Washington, 10 receptions for 54 yards on the year. Now, the Odell Beckham Jr. signing wasn't this massive deal for the Miami Dolphins, right? It was $3 million and then incentives up to $8 million. And like you just said, he ain't no way he's hitting those incentives. But Josh, what's so freaking weird to me is, why did we waste all this time in the offseason? Don't get me wrong. The point of the offseason is to waste time. But why did we hear about all these conversations that McDaniel and Beckham Jr. had about how he can be used in the offense and all the things that he can do, just for the Miami Dolphins not to really do any of that this year? And I'm not even going to blame the Dolphins. I think I worded that a little wrong there, but it's just very weird that you have Chris Greer, who's been here since 2016. You have Mike McDaniel, who's been here since 2022, and you understand Odell Beckham's 32 years old, that you can draft somebody in the 6th round to catch 10 balls and for 50 yards. And they're going to, like you said, maybe make a massive impact in special teams, maybe hurt you sometimes too. We'll sweep that under the rug, but some sort of impact. You mentioned the impact in the running game. How are these not part of the conversation for people who have been around this franchise for so long, when you can just say, yeah, we flirted with this guy for so long, got him what he wanted, convinced him to come here. We're only going to give him 9 receptions, and the production can be replaced, no offense to Malik Washington, by a 6th round rookie. Like that is a huge lack of resources. That's a huge waste of time. And when you're this deep into this campaign of Greer and McDaniel, it might be something weird to get riled up about, man. But when you're talking about winning in the margins, that's what the Dolphins, for having these guys tenure be together for so long, these are supposed to be winning moves.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we as fans, I mean, I don't think that we should be at fault for getting hyped about Odell Beckham Jr. Even a little bit, but yeah, okay, we're dumb, we're idiots. You're right. But yeah, I just why would they? I'm sorry, I got thrown off by the idiot thing. My thing is, why do you bring in it's okay. They brought in Odell Beckham Jr. to improve this offense, take it to the next level. I think they continued to say that was going to be that, guy that could help them move the change and be a more reliable third down option. We joked it was what, Sherfield, Craycraft, and then this was that next evolution. Berrios is in there somewhere, but it did not work out by any stretch of the imagination. It did give a time for Malik Washington to, get accustomed to the NFL speed, and I'm okay with it for $3 million or whatever it ended up being. I mean, some people are saying, Mike McDaniel has no regrets. I understand where they're at with that, but $3 million isn't the end of the world for Odell Beckham Jr. It just sucks that he was absolutely cooked and did not really help the offense much, if at all.
And it's just so interesting when you think about how this offense was supposed to operate and how Tua, his air yards was insane, and they were taking all these downfield shots. Was it as simple as, Josh? Things were so awkward after those first 3 weeks. McDaniel understood how things were going, and Jonnu Smith just became the guy because he was that more physical presence? Or was it more of a situation where it was either up to one of these guys? There's going to be these opportunities. Mike McDaniel knew these opportunities were coming, and it was going to be a race between Jonnu Smith and Odell Beckham Jr., two completely different styles. But when you think about how McDaniel does things, I think you can use different styles to get the same job done, as long as it gets done.
Yeah, not to go too Pepe Silva, but I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., he wasn't out there catching passes from Tua. How much of that chemistry was there with Jonnu Smith, and how much, throughout the season, you see Jonnu Smith making those catches, getting the first downs, picking up that tough yards. You see Odell Beckham Jr. get beat on a quick slant, or whatever it was. Maybe just don't trust to go there in those situations. So, it's probably a little bit of both. But again, I don't – do you think Odell Beckham Jr. signed somewhere? Like I saw someone say he's going to end up with the Bills or a team like that. But, I mean – I don't know, man. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, what was it? Chase Claypool signed with the Bills in the offseason, and there was 2 weeks of hype. There's no time for hype, and there's no time to deal with this. There's no time to deal with the nonsense. The Dolphins didn't have the time to deal with the Odell Beckham Jr. not practicing, being on injured reserve, because that timing is so important. Being there and practicing and getting those reps. We probably should have seen it more as a caution sign when it was these guys haven't been on the field together. What? He's been signed for 4 months and they haven't been on the field. That is a huge red flag when you can, again, get the same production from a 6th-round rookie, man. I think that the contract's not the huge end of the world or anything like that, but I think there could have been more time and more effort spent elsewhere. Maybe you could have watch those final 3 minutes of backup quarterback film to say, maybe we should sign a backup quarterback instead. And Josh, it's so funny because I also if you flip the coin, and we don't got to get too deep into this, but this could happen on the other side of the football too with Patrick McMorris and Jordan Poyer. Would that not also be the most surprising thing in the world, where another rookie, it's just hunger and being available, just comes and takes over?
Yeah, and I mean, at that point about the quarterback, I'll shut up now. I was sitting there saying $3 million is not so bad, but when you could have paid a backup quarterback, who I'm not gonna sit and go to schematics, but you could have had
Andrew Van Ginkel, dude.
And oh god, yeah. So yeah, and I'm gonna bring this up. I don't want to spin too far out of control here, but I am gonna bring this up the next time I get shit on for Preston Williams or Isaiah Ford, Lynn Bowden. I mean, they had much better Dolphin careers than Odell Beckham Jr. So at least I can put my hat in that.
Did Lynn Bowden wear number 3?
He did at one point, didn't he?
That number, we gotta just burn that number, dude. That number. No offense to Robbie Chosen, I know you're.
He switched to it too, and I think he switched, and then that's probably when he got cut.
Because
I got to look into that.
He had some games where it was all right, Lynn Bowden, it's wow. And then he switched to number 3, and then he suffered the same Will Fuller, Robbie Chosen, Odell Beckham, Josh Rosen fate. I think we got to get rid of the number 3 and number 19 while we're at it. Launch them both to the moon.
Both, yeah. I was going to ask you real quick. Do you see Eric Ezukama? I saw I don't know if it's Omar Kelly or Barry Jackson. They were joking back and forth, but I still got a hype video he asked me to make correct for him that I was going to post on Twitter whenever he made his triumphant return. I'm still waiting. So I mean, do you think he steps up? Maybe Craycraft or Grant DeBose? I believe he's also I think his window's coming up, or he might be ready to go soon. Is open. So that's another guy. So yeah, I mean, I know he can be a factor in the run game as well. So maybe that's another reason they yeeted Odell Beckham Jr. out there for now.
I think there are a couple different things happening here. I think Grant DuBose coming back and them opening the window. So this would be the 7th of 8 IR spots. This is the final nail in the Eric Ezukama coffin. That's what I think this is. This is completely unrelated. I think Grant DuBose is coming in to be the special teams guy. He's 6'2". He's the physical guy. I know we're all going to stare at that week 2 ball off the shoulder interception. That was just the ugliest play of all time. But for some reason or another, and this is probably a bad thing, the Miami Dolphins identified Grant DuBose as a special teams ace. And we know how great those players are, and we know how great Miami's special teams is. So that's kind of what I see happening, unfolding there, where you still want that big body wide receiver and you want them to be doing a little bit more. And whether Eric Ezukama could only be that big body wide receiver and not a special teams player, that's neither here nor there. Where Beckham, I see that more as a River Craycraft situation, where Beckham out there, he's not going to go block, or he's not going to continue once the ball is out of Tua's hands. So he's going to be out on the field, and you're going to have, 10 players out there within 2 seconds when he just kind of shrugs up his hands like, I didn't get the ball. You'll have Craig Kraft more involved in that area. So I think that while Du Bois is coming back, I think these are two different situations where they'll help the wide receiver core in different ways, and that's about as political as an answer as you can get from me, Joshua.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's one of the good things about. I mean, we're sitting here, we're hanging on for our dear life, but towards the end of the year, you get to see some of these younger players. Get to see some of these draft picks that you invested in, see if they're worth anything. A guy that you claimed off waivers. So I was joking, Jake. It sounded like what you're basically telling me is I'm going to see Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle on the sideline, and Grant DuBose going up there for a fade at the goal line very shortly. Is that what you're telling me? Right after a commercial break and a timeout.
Dude, you're making a joke, but it's going to happen. You are honestly spot on with what's going to happen, dude. It's absolutely insane to me. And, oh, boy. I'm not surprised by the move. I think the Odell Beckham Jr. decision, it's just kind of something you laugh at, that we wasted so much time on it. Hopefully we see a little bit more River Craycraft. He was inactive last week. I'd love to see more Eric Ezukama. I'd love to see be able to release that highlight reel. You have to find you've seen on X those Family Guy tweets that have been going around where it's the first tweet where it's like, what's that Family Guy intro into someone's highlights? You got to find the funniest thing for Eric Ezukama and then play that video, play his highlights. I think that should be a off-season project. I think that'd be pretty funny.
I'll add it to my list, and you got to make sure you jump on me for that because I'm terrible at sticking to doing things I say I will.
All right, Josh, we've made it 31 minutes. Let's talk about how great Tua Tagovailoa is. 315 or more yards in each of the last 3 weeks, at least 36 attempts in each of the last 4 weeks, and no interceptions. 46 pass attempts against Green Bay, 47 last week against the Jets. And Josh, just reading those and thinking about the pure volume of passes that Tua Tagovailoa has been throwing as Miami has won 3 of the last 4 games, it is insane to me that he is throwing the ball 46 times per game and not one ball has landed in a linebacker's gut. And you're throwing the ball so many times and your instincts are so important to how you play. You just kind of, you chalk it up once in a while. They got us. They beat us to it. They read it. 46 attempts, 47 attempts, and no interceptions, man. Can Tua sustain this?
I mean, you can play my clip a second ago. You can play this one now. I mean, right into a linebacker's gut. I mean, it's inevitable at this point. I forgot to look at the point differential. I think the Texans are +9 or something. I mean, they can take the ball away. So, I want to say it's sustainable, but I think we can say it's probably come to an end. But it's not just your fault. I mean, you see it everywhere, right? Every little graphic talks about it, talks about the historic run he's on. And I mean, he's absolutely just picking apart defenses with what they're giving him. I mean, he's throwing to spots where you just don't even think that quarterbacks can fit the ball at times. And it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're a defense, right? You take away the deep thing, that's what's going to happen. He's just going to pick you apart underneath. So huge test here, but I think this will be that one where he turns the ball over, unfortunately.
One of the keys to this game, Josh, and I think this is what's so interesting because I think both the Dolphins defense and the Houston's offense are very awkward. I think they both can get beat. I think they both can make good plays, and I think that could be a difference maker. Another situation that could be a difference maker, Miami's offensive line versus Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. have a combined 20 sacks on the season, 10.5 for Danielle, 9.5 for Will Anderson. Mike McDaniel is pessimistic about Teron Armstead's availability, which would mean Patrick Paul on the left side. However, Kendall Lamb has returned to practice. He said it wouldn't be the easiest thing to do and go out and play through his back injury, but it's actually trending in the direction where he should be available. So, Josh, how do you feel about this Miami Dolphins offensive line against these pass rushers? Is this going to be a scenario where Tua once again can continue to get that ball out fast enough where we look at Miami's tackle situation and you can kind of say, hey, he's going to get 2.2 seconds. It's physically impossible for you to get to him quick enough, and he's just going to negate this all day long.
Yeah, man, you asked me how I felt. Queasy AF. I mean, this is probably the queasiest I felt about a matchup in a while. And I mean, they have been playing really well. I mean, Patrick Paul, you look at what he did last week. I mean, he didn't look like a rookie out there, but I mean, yeah, this is Danielle Hunter. I mean, this Will Anderson Jr., this is a different monster. And then you look at the secondary. I mean, they're clamping down allowing those guys up front to get more time. I mean, if Tua can't get that first, if Tua looks over and he sees that his, first throw's taken, then he looks, number two's gone. I mean, that's why I think in this game, having that check down like a Devon Achane is really going to be, I mean, we've seen it all year. I mean, that's that kind of cheat code that the Dolphins have, that game genie that's just always settling there that can break tackles. So I'm queasy about that matchup up front, but I do trust that Tua can get that ball out. I just, wonder what that Houston Texans back end is going to do that could really, shake things up and cause confusion for that Dolphins offense.
If the Houston Texans defense is like a big, like let's just say a big baseball bat, the center of the bat has a huge hole in it because Azeez Al-Shaair is not going to be playing their starting middle linebacker. He is suspended for this game. He took out Trevor Lawrence, who was sliding, concussed him a few weeks ago. I think, man, that could be an entire difference maker for this game. So he's not only Houston's best run stopper, but he's missed just one tackle in 208 snaps. He has a missed tackle percentage of 2.1%. And we have David Long Jr. missing almost double-digit tackles in a game. I think this is where the Miami Dolphins can take advantage. And this, to me, screams Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane. Whether it's trying to push up the middle where you can avoid Hunter and Anderson, who are both, they're solid against the run. I wouldn't call them incredible. But if you're looking for someone to take advantage, you got to try to exploit the linebackers. And to me, that screams Jonnu, that screams Devon Achane. And that's where I think the Miami Dolphins offense can kind of win a little bit here against the Texans.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And then Neville Hewitt, that's another one of their linebackers, right? Long time no see, a former Miami Dolphin. But yeah, man, with Azir, I'm not even gonna. With him out, I mean that's going to be a huge void in that middle of that Texans defense. And Jimmy Ward, I mean he's their safety. He's that guy that might come down and try to add some support in that. But then what does that do to the back end, right? Will that open up the bigger play? So that area in the middle is definitely where we're gonna have to watch. And we know how much Tua Tagovailoa just loves to slice and dice. The Dolphins love to run those crossers. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad that he's out of this one, right? I'm glad he took that crappy hit against. I'm not glad he took that hit against Trevor Lawrence, but at least it wasn't against Tua, I guess.
The Texans are also going to be without safety Jalen Petrie, who underwent season-ending surgery on his shoulder. So that's two starting defenders that you're going to have to really try to figure things out for the Texans. And man, it's just so interesting because both sides of the ball match up so well for so different reasons. Like where both the Dolphins defense and the Houston offense have some like awkward parts to them. The Texans hold opponents to the NFL's lowest completion percentage. On our recap show, Josh, earlier this week, we were ranting about how Tua has the highest completion percentage in the NFL. Like this is going to be such a fun battle. And this is going to be, man, can the Dolphins win against a good team? Like the Rams, they're above 500. It was actually great to see what they did to the 49ers. You're kind of hoping they're maybe going to roll over a little bit more next week when the Dolphins have to play them. But you can't be looking ahead. I'm so excited to see if Tua can continue this streak against a defense that is so great. But I just look at 46 pass attempts. I look at 47 pass attempts and think something has to change. And Josh, if something has to change, why not the rushing attack? Devon Achane, 24 rushing yards last week. Sounds like Raheem Mostert's going to be back in the mix. If you want some sort of physicality, he could even be that guy.
Yeah, Mostert. I mean, he was that guy, right? He was that guy that we were joking, run Mostert, run. It looked like beast mode at times against the Bills. I mean, he would have been another guy that would have been nice, to have in this late season push against a team like the Texans. So I would love to see that run game really get going. I think it's funny that Cat was he like use Alec Ingold in the back, you nerd, or something like use a run play with Alec Ingold blocking and as the lead blocker. I mean, I don't know why the Dolphins at times overthink it. So would love to see this run game get going, and what better way would it be than against the Texans? So I'd love to get that established, but man, 24 yards only last week from Devon Achane. I mean, again, that's why you're seeing those dump offs and all them screens, because you can't, do it from under center. You can't do it the traditional style. So you're running these bubbles and, trying to get these fabricated touches in other ways. So I mean, we might continue to see that throughout the rest of the year. I don't know.
I understand that the Dolphins have there's reasoning behind using Achane in these short yardage situations, and they're a lot smarter football people than me. I'm still going to deny it. I know, don't do it anymore. Like I don't care if you have a reason. I don't care if you have the science to back up your reasoning. People ignore truths for a lot little lot littler than that. So I'm just going to deny it. No, stop doing it. Even if you think there's a way this can work with Devon Achane, for the love of God, stop doing it. Try something different, please. That's where I'm at, Josh. Stubborn as all hell.
Put Skylar Thompson in there. Give him a sneak. I know we don't want Tua getting hit. I mean, seriously, a big body, like that's what you need. That guy's just gonna lunge forward. Anything more than Snoop. Yes, I was gonna say Snoop. I'm worried about him. Then something would happen to me. Be like, oh, why did Mike McDaniel try that? And you know how it go.
All right, Josh. How you feeling? What's the score looking like?
Oh man. Okay. I mean, I go up and down. I think I said earlier in the year I was going to try not to be that homer. I think I went back on that throughout times. I'm going to go back to just going with my gut, and my gut tells me the Dolphins are going to find a way to lose this game. As heartbreaking as that is, I mean, I think Tua Tagovailoa will have another good game. Statistically, we'll see him putting up those hopefully fantasy numbers. I think people on Twitter will be sitting there bickering whether or not it came at garbage time. We know all the underneath think and dunk, the same stuff we always hear, but I think it will probably be a close game, but at the end of the day, I think the Texans are just, I don't want to say a better team, but they've tasted success. They've won these meaningful games that I've yet to see the Dolphins win. And just with the Dolphins, season in a balance, I just don't know if they can come up there and match what the Texans are going to bring after a bye. So again, pains me to say this, but we'll go 31-21 Texans.
Can you? I don't know if you can read it. The light might be ruining it.
I can't. No way.
I had it the opposite.
Oh, let's go.
21 Dolphins. Josh, I think this is going to be a scenario. It is crazy to me that the Dolphins went cross country. Like everybody always talks about the importance of cross country games, except when it's the Dolphins. They went, beat the Rams. Clean performance. I'd chalk up, here's the loser Dolphin fan. I'd chalk up, you're going to lose at Lambeau Field, Thanksgiving, prime time at night, whatever. I think this matches up so well where the Dolphins defense can do enough. They can shake the tree enough to force an interception, maybe a couple sacks, maybe a strip fumble. CJ Stroud has been sacked 42 times through 13 games. There are fundamental flaws with that offense. 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Javon Holland, I pray to God you don't drop another. Jalen Ramsey, I hope he gets his hands on his. And if Tua goes out there, man, and does this for like a 5th straight game, goes out there, 46 attempts, no interceptions against the number 1 defense and completion percentage allowed. Like this would be the first time that Tua, like there have been times where like he said things and we've like taken it to the bank, like George thinking of jerk store, like this is great. This would be the first time he could, if he goes into Houston and beats the Texans, they aren't a great team, but he could legitimately say, what are you going to say now? You beat a team that's 8-5. All of a sudden, they're panicking because the entire AFC South is wide open, which also helps the Dolphins. God, man, I think this is such a great opportunity for Tua. And I think the Houston Texans offense is a team that I don't think we're going to see what happened with Aaron Rodgers. I'm actually going to buy stock in what Anthony Weaver said in the sense of, it was Rodgers. It was Rodgers that beat us. I think they can confuse CJ Stroud enough. I think CJ Stroud's a good quarterback. 15 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. The NFL has figured out what he likes to do, and they've been able to take it away. If they still had Stephon Diggs, whole different story. But this is an entire offense that if you can slow down Joe Mixon, hopefully you can take advantage of things, man. This has been a long rant, and it's going to look real stupid after the game, but this is such a great opportunity where I do think the Dolphins can take advantage, and I do think they'll learn from last week where it's this Houston's offense. Nico Collins can take any ball 80 yards like that for a touchdown. Like he can shake one defender. He could shake Kader Kohu and just send him to the shadow realm, and that'll be it. I think Miami will be a little more aggressive on 4th down, and I think they'll be able to get a little bit of a lead here.
I love it. I'm ready to run through a wall. And I was going to say Bradley Chubb would change my mind, but I don't know that I would. Could he flip it 10 point? That whole flip that I had said 31-21. I don't know if I can say Bradley Chubb would flip it, but I mean, getting him back would definitely help. But dude, you got me stoked, and now I just feel bad. But one of us has got to be right, and maybe it'll be 31-21. But I'm praying, Jake, that praying that. Oh man, what would that even do? Let's not even look into that. What would a tie do? Screw everything up. Maybe it'd help everything.
I don't know if it would help or hurt. I don't know, man. It's just a very interesting matchup where Dolphin fans for so long, we've tried to be like two of this, two, like we believe he can do it. Like this is the scenario where I think the table is going to be set where, I think LaFleur and the Packers offense was really good. I think Jordan Reed was able to take advantage of some massive weaknesses for the defense. And then obviously you have Josh Jacobs running wild, which was a complete difference maker. I don't know if Houston has that efficiency. I think these two teams, despite Houston being 8-5, if Tua, I hate using ifs, but if he wasn't hurt the first 4 weeks of the year, the 4 weeks on IR, I should say, I think these teams would have nearly identical records. I think these two teams are very similar. And when you look at CJ Stroud in year 2, and we look at Tua year 1 on a new contract, when he's seen everything that's happened and when he's kind of picked up his play to help try to bring the team back, I think that could be a difference maker. And I'm going to be super depressed if it comes out and, CJ Stroud plays better. And I'm sure we'll hear like, oh, X, Y, and Z, like this is why this happened. But like this to me seems like a great no excuses opportunity for Tua to walk in and just be the best version of himself. I don't know, man. That's all I got.
Dude, that sounds like some Mike McDaniel stuff. I love that. Yeah, and I mean, why not? I mean, you're right, man. I think the biggest thing and the biggest dagger to our heart is just the Tua's health, right? The fact that we didn't lose him for those 4 games. I think everyone would agree with you, man. If he was out there, he'd be doing the same things, and we'd be, battling for a, potential playoff seed against the Houston Texans. So, dude, best version of himself. Let's see it, and well, let's do this, man. Now I'm hyped for this game now. So thank you, Jake, and I hope our fans are also hyped and ready to see Tua Tagovailoa go out there and shut down one of the last narratives that continue to haunt him.
Josh, and I thank you. It is always fun to do this podcast with you. It's so weird because we're at the time of like the work year where it's very awkward. There's a lot of standstill between Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. The holidays really slow things down. But man, the football season is just picking up pace. So it's really hard to deal with the dynamic of everything kind of calming down and everything picking up the pace. But thank you all so much for listening to Another Dolphins podcast. We will be back shortly after Miami's game on Sunday to recap, give some instant reactions, and get us ready for the following week. But thank you all so much for listening. Go have a wonderful weekend. Just remember, you guys in the South are not dealing with the snow and cold weather that Josh and I are. So go enjoy it. And most importantly, fins up.
Fins up.
Fins up.